Before I show you the interview with the Israeli TV company regarding the coronation, I wanted to share with you Derrick Jensen's premises from his book Endgame. Because what I think is going on is that all this stuff is a distraction from the real problem, which is the system itself. And of course, the establishment, the monarchy, the governments, the corporations, they're all part of this ongoing insanity that will probably end up destroying everything. And so I wanted to read these premises as they outline clearly what the problems are. Premise 1: civilization is not and can never be sustainable. This is especially true for industrial civilization. Premise 2: traditional communities, i.e., sane communities, do not often voluntarily give up or sell the resources on which their communities are based until their communities have been destroyed. They also do not willingly allow their land bases to be damaged so that other resources, gold, oil, and so on, can be extracted. It follows that those who want the resources will do what they can to destroy traditional communities. Premise 3: our way of living, industrial civilization, or Babylon, is based on, requires, and would collapse very quickly without persistent and widespread violence. Premise 4: civilization is based on a clearly defined and widely accepted, yet often unarticulated hierarchy. Violence done by those higher on the hierarchy to those lower is nearly always invisible, that is, unnoticed. When it is noticed, it is fully rationalized. Violence done by those lower on the hierarchy to those higher is unthinkable, and when it does occur, is regarded with shock, horror, and the fetishization of the victims. Premise 5: the property of those higher on the hierarchy is more valuable than the lives of those below. It is acceptable for those above to increase the amount of property they control, in everyday language to make money, by destroying or taking the lives of those below. This is called production (brackets capitalism). If those below damage the property of those above may kill or otherwise destroy the lives of those below. This is called justice. Premise 6: civilization is not redeemable. This culture will not undergo any sort of voluntary transformation to a sane and sustainable way of living. If we do not put a halt to it, civilization will continue to immiserate the vast majority of humans and to degrade the planet until it (bracket civilization and probably the planet) collapses. The effects of this degradation will continue to harm humans and non-humans for a very long time. Premise 7: the longer we wait for civilization to crash, or the longer we wait before we ourselves bring it down, the messier will be the crash, and the worse things will be for those humans and non-humans who live during it and for those who come after. Premise 8: the needs of the natural world are more important than the needs of the economic system. Another way of putting this is any economic or social system that does not benefit the natural communities on which it is based is unsustainable, immoral, and stupid. Sustainability, morality, and intelligence, as well as justice, requires the dismantling of any such economic or social system, or at the very least, disallowing it from damaging your land base. Premise 9: although there will clearly someday be far fewer humans than there are at present, there are many ways this reduction in population could occur or be achieved depending on the passivity or activity with which we choose to approach this transformation. Some of these ways would be characterized by extreme violence and privation. Nuclear Armageddon, for example, would reduce both population and consumption, yet do so horrifically. The same would be true for a continuation of overshoot, followed by crash. Other ways could be characterized by less violence. Given the current levels of violence by this culture against both humans and the natural world, however, it's not possible to speak of reductions in population and consumption that do not involve violence and privation. Not because the reductions themselves would necessarily involve violence, but because violence and privation have become the default. Yet some ways of reducing population and consumption, while still violent, would consist of decreasing the current levels of violence required and caused by the often forced movement of resources from the poor to the rich, and would of course be marked by a reduction in current violence against the natural world. Personally and collectively, We may be able to both reduce the amount and soften the character of violence that occurs during this ongoing and perhaps long-term shift, or we may not. But this much is certain. If we do not approach it actively, if we do not talk about our predicament and what we're going to do about it, the violence will almost undoubtedly be far more severe, the privation more extreme. Premise 10. The culture as a whole and most of its members are insane. The culture is driven by a death urge, an urge to destroy life. Premise 11. From the beginning, this culture, sadocracy, has been a culture of occupation. Premise 12. There are no rich people in the world, and there are no poor people. There are just people. The rich may have lots of pieces of green paper that many pretend are worth something, or their presumed riches may even be more abstract, numbers on hard drives at banks, and the poor may not. These rich claim they own land, and the poor are often denied the right to make that same claim. A primary purpose of the police is to enforce the delusions of those with lots of pieces of green paper. Those without the green tokens generally buy into these delusions almost as quickly and completely as those with. These delusions carry with them extreme consequences in the real world. Premise 13. Those in power rule by force, and the sooner we break ourselves of illusions to the contrary, the sooner we can at least begin to make reasonable decisions about whether, when, and how we're going to resist effectively. Premise 14. From birth on, and probably from conception, but I'm not sure how I'd make the case, we are individually and collectively enculturated to hate life, hate the natural world, hate the wild, hate wild animals, hate women, hate children, hate our bodies, hate and fear our emotions, and hate ourselves. If we do not hate the world, we could not allow it to be destroyed before our eyes. If we did not hate ourselves, we could not allow our homes and our bodies to be poisoned. Premise 15. Love does not imply pacifism. Premise 16. The material world is primary. This does not mean that the spirit does not exist, nor that the material world is all there is. It means that spirit mixes with flesh. It means also that real world actions have real world consequences. It means we cannot rely on Jesus, Krishna, Santa Claus, the Great Mother, higher power, or even the Easter Bunny to get us out of this mess. It means this mess really is a mess, and not just the movement of God's eyebrows. It means we have to face this mess ourselves. It means that for the time we are here on earth, whether or not we end up somewhere else after we die, and whether we are condemned or privileged to live here, the earth is the point. It is primary, it is our home, it is everything. It is silly to think or act or be as though this world is not real and primary. It is silly and pathetic to not live our lives as though our lives are real. Premise 17. It is a mistake, or more likely denial, to base our decisions on whether actions arising from these will or won't frighten fence-sitters or the mass of selfish, insane citizens, brackets, chimpanzees. That's my edition. Premise 18. Our current wayward sense of self is no more sustainable than our current wayward use of energy or technology. Premise 19. The culture's problem lies, above all, in the deluded belief that controlling, consuming, and abusing the natural world is justifiable. Premise 20. Within this culture, economics, not community well-being, not morals, not ethics, not justice, not life itself, drives social decisions. Modification of premise 20. Social decisions are determined primarily and often exclusively on the basis of whether these decisions will increase the power and monetary fortunes of the decision makers and those they serve. Remodification of premise 20. Social decisions are founded primarily and often exclusively on the almost entirely unexamined belief that the decision makers and those they serve are entitled to magnify their power and or financial fortunes at the expense of those below. Remodification of premise 20. If you dig to the heart of it, if there were any heart left, you would find that social decisions are determined primarily on the basis of how well those decisions serve the ends of controlling or destroying wild nature.
דני שיין כיכב בכתבה שלך אז שהיית פה בהלוויית המלכה, אם אתה בטח זוכר כמו שאמרת, והוא היה עם מגפון, והוא ככה התריס, והוא אפילו עצבן אם אפשר לומר את זה ככה, הוא מדבר עברית גם, את העומדים בתור כדי לראות להיפרד מהמלכה, לראות את גופתה. דני, שלום, how are you?
Shalom, I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
So you're Londoner, Jewish, your daughter lives in Israel, ואתה מדבר עברית גם, נכון?
כן, נכון.
So this is something between what? Ridiculous and ludicrous?
Yeah, it's an absolute farce.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, they spent £100 million on this whole palaver. For what? What, for some elderly man to sit in a seat? And, you know, people come from all over the world. And it's just another distraction from the real root problems that we have in our society that is, you know, leading us off a cliff.
Yeah, but you know, rituals can be sometimes ridiculous. You know, we believe that the people of Israel went within the Red Sea, right? And God opened the sea to... we like it, you know, we like it this way, and we celebrate Passover every year, though some parts of it may be a bit strange. Why is that so wrong?
Well, I mean, it's not about wrong. I suppose it's not about wrong or right. It's about priorities, and it's about what the whole point of it is. And what I'm saying is that from my point of view, the real problem is the system in which we live, which is a very, very dangerous system, which benefits a tiny number of people at the top to the detriment of all of the people at the bottom. And that system is extremely dangerous. It's killing us. It's making us sick and ill. In this country, the prices of electricity and gas have gone up, doubled or tripled, right? Normal people are finding it desperately hard to get by, and this guy
They asked me to translate, so just in a nutshell, הבעיות האמיתיות שלנו, תעזור לי גם בתרגום, זה מחירי הגז, מחירי הקיום, והנה יש כאן שכבה קטנה, what, is taking advantage of the people, but it brings income to this kingdom as well.
They've spent £100 million apparently on this, probably more. Yes, it may bring some people here.
Yeah, but they paid the £100 million to whom? British citizens to bring service to the ceremony.
אפשר לבקש שאלה מהאולפן שתעבור לדני?
They could have given that money to help.
דני שומע אותך, שומע את מואב? כן, מואב הוא שומע אותך.
Hello, Mr. Shine.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I want to ask you, if that's so, how come so many British citizens, maybe the majority of them, still support the institute, the monarchy? What is your real explanation for that?
That's very simple, because the monarchy and the system have spent, you know, millions, if not billions of pounds brainwashing the people to believe in them. So, you know, no wonder they're like that.
In what way did they do it?
Well, they've got control of the BBC. They've basically got control of the, you know, of the media, and everyone's coming here, including yourselves, and you know, giving them all this attention. It makes me feel sick watching this gold. It's just, yeah, this gold carriage. It's just, what on earth is going on here? Well,
it's nice. You can admit it's nice. No, it's beautiful, and the horses are magnificent, right?
I wonder if the horses know what's going on. I wonder if they'd agree to.
Danny, can you understand the real need, the fundamental need for people to look up to something that is historical, that gives them a sense of confidence, gives them a sense of stability, that is prolonging over thousands of years, and is very crucial or fundamental to the very existence of a nation?
Firstly, I'm not so sure about this whole nation business anyway, but more important than that, yes, people may need to look up to people, but they should be looking up to people who are showing them an example of how to live frugally, of how to live with very little, of how to have very few needs and be happy with very little, not have to have some gold carriages and millions or thousands of people running around for them and having, you know, palaces and houses. This is not someone that I look up to. I look up to a simple person who can live and be happy and live kindly and be happy with little and help other people.
I want to ask you, Danny, practicality. The younger may agree with you more. How long it will become till there is a majority of Brits that think that it's time to say goodbye to the monarchy?
Well, I don't think that's going to happen because, as I said to you, well, I don't know. I can't see it happening because I think they've got control of the media, so they brainwash the people with all this stuff.
אוקיי, חושב דני שלא יהיה מצב שבו מרבית האומה הבריטית תתנגד למלוכה, מכיוון שכמו שהוא אמר, הם שולטים במדיה, הם שולטים, היה איזה סקנדל לגבי ה-BBC שהמונרכיה, בשידור הזה שאתם רואים, המונרכיה קיבלה בעצם איזה כפתור שיוכל לצנזר אם קורית איזה תקלה, לא ראינו שקורית איזה תקלה, אבל מצד שני, לך תדע, אבל ה-BBC הסכים לכך שהמונרכיה תכבה את השלטר על השידור או תחליף אותו עם איזה משהו במקרה של תקלה. Relatively speaking, you know, going back to Charles I, this is a reasonable king that you may disagree with the whole institution, but at least, you know, it makes sense. No.
What? It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it's very clever. I've got to give it to them. They're very, very clever and sophisticated. I have a friend who works for their who used to work for their PR campaign. Right, guy lives down my road, so they're very, very clever. And also, by the way, you know, the Jewish community in the UK. You see, it's impossible to sort of to stand up against these people because, you know, the Jewish community, for example, you know.
A minority will never stand up against the...
Yeah, but exactly, and they obviously want to be in good relationships with these people, and so they suck up to them and they don't challenge what's going on here.
תיאום קצר, הוא אומר שהקהילה היהודית גם אם אינה מסכימה לכל העניין הזה, אז מכיוון שהיא מיעוט, אז היא בוודאי לא תצא נגדה. רק להסביר, בשעה שאנחנו מותחים בביקורת או מביעים סימני שאלה לגבי המוסד הזה, אנחנו רואים כאן את מרכבת הזהב, שבה המלכה אליזבת לפני 70 שנה הגיעה לטקס ההכתרה שלה, ולפניה המלך ג'ורג' השישי, אביה, הגיע לטקס ההכתרה שלו, כשאדוארד השמיני לא זכה לטקס ההכתרה, נכון, הוא פרש לפני כן בגלל אהובת ליבו, וזה העניין פשוט, הופה, זה גם כן very traditional פה, המים, הגשם הלונדוני הזה. והכרכרה הזאת, כרכרת הזהב, משמשת מאות בשנים, היא מאוד לא נוחה, אין בה קפיצים, לכן כל טלטול יכול ככה לעשות איזה משהו בגב של המלך צ'ארלס, נקווה שהוא יגיע במקשה אחת אל הארמון, תהיה לנו תהלוכה ענקית, הרבה יותר גדולה מכפי שראינו בדרך מהארמון אל האבי, אל וסטמינסטר, עם ים של חיילים ושל תזמורות, מכל הצבעים והגוונים והמדים הכוונה, כשאמרתם קודם, הנסיכה אן, אחותו של המלך, שאגב השתתפה באולימפיאדה, נכון? משחקים האולימפיים במונטריאול ב-76, אם אני לא טועה? או לא יודע, דני. היא הייתה שם בתחום הרכיבה, במקצוע הרכיבה, היא תרכב והיא תהיה, כמו שאמרתם קודם, המאבטחת הראשית של כרכרת המלך. בואו נשמע עוד קצת מהטקס המקסים הזה, ונגיד תודה לדני שיין. תודה רבה, דני. Long live the king!
תודה לדני שיין, הרפובליקני שונא המונרכיה.
שאמר לא מעט דברי טעם, אגב.
מה?
שאמר לא מעט דברי טעם. יש קצת הנטייה הזו של השמאל הבריטי להבין את העולם במונחים של קונספירציות גדולות, כשהאמת היא יותר עם ניואנסים ויותר מרובדת, אבל ההתנגדות העקרונית שלו היא לדברי טעם.
כן, ועדיין מאיזושהי סיבה הוא במיעוט.
ודאי מאיזושהי סיבה הוא שם, אגב, בלונדון, איך שהוא צופה בכל הדבר הזה.
לא, הוא לא צופה.
הוא במקרה בא למחות.
דיברתי איתו הבוקר, הוא אמר לי, אני בג'ים, אני פה ושם, אם אתם רוצים אני אבוא